Hi everyone, this is Prerequisite from Dented Code. Welcome back to my Create CRM ticket system from scratch using MERN stack series. In the previous tutorial, we created a backend API using Node and Express, and we set up everything we need to start writing code. Now in this tutorial, we are going to continue writing user routers, and we are also going to add Mongo Database in our application so that we can store user information into our database. So what we'll do is that we will create the create user endpoint, and when we send the user information, we will save into our database. Before we saving user data in database, we will encrypt the user password. It's going to be exciting, guys. So get ready, stretch, and then start writing code. So I'll see you inside. So this is where we left up last time. So we're going to continue from here today. So first thing what we're gonna do is that to continue, let's create a get request. In the case of this, our CRM ticket system, the customer are not allowed to create the account for themselves, but we are going to create the account here just to show you that if in your case you need to create the user account, you can do so. So now we will create the user account from here, but later in the production, the user account will be created by admin. So let's see how you can create the user account and then store in the database. Okay, let's start from the creating new router. I'm gonna say router. So we will get the post request, and inside I'm gonna say of user response request res and the arrow function. And here what I'm gonna do simply now, let's do console res.json, send the requested body. Okay, here the spelling router.post, save it, and then let's get our postman to the post request. Now let's create the post request. Go to post. In the post request, so what we need is, first you need to have the header. You need to set the header content type, C capital content -t capital type, and the content type is application/JSON, and in the body we will send the data. So this is the return data section, and this is the sending data section. So I'm going to send raw data, the JSON format. So the user, let's say we're going to need username. Let's output my name, and the company name, I'll just leave company name for now. Address, probably some address Sydney, and phone 441, just random number, and the email, definitely, because user want to sign in with the email later in the future. So I'm gonna say simply e@e.com, just to fake the email, and the password. So here I'm gonna say secret 123, the best password ever. Okay, so let's send this one. Make sure the file is saved, and send the send request, and say unexpected JSON position 17. But just put this one in inverted comma. Okay, that's a JSON, so you need to wrap everything in double quotation. Okay, message name is not defined. This is coming from here. Let's delete that one again and save now. And okay, when you do router all, so every time you come through this file, it will go through here. So if you want to go to the next router, we always have to pass next at the bottom of this router.all. So next function, otherwise router will be returned from here only. So I'm going to comment this out, save the file, and send this form again. There you go, form is returned. So what we did, we received the data and we return the data again. So if you want to see in the server side, we can do request.body again, save the file, and when you send it, there is the user data we have. So we are going to store this data in MongoDB. Okay, so guys, if you don't have Mongo Database installed in your computer already, some time ago I have created a tutorial how to install Mongo Database in the Windows. So I'll put the link to card, I don't know which side, on the top somewhere or in the description below. Go check that out. Make sure you install the MongoDB before you continue here. Now, so I have a MongoDB installed with the Compass user interface. So this is the Compass user interface here. this is default database. So if I refresh here, I don't have anything here, and I'm gonna minimize this. So we're going to need a Mongo client to connect our application to Mongo database. For that, there is a package called Mongoose. This package we are going to use. So that's 1 million weekly download. So we're going to install Mongoose. I also want to install the .env. I'll show you in a second what's that for. And let's install Mongoose and then .env. This is also 12 million weekly download .env. Okay, let's install that. Let's stop the application, press Ctrl C and do npm install Mongoose and .env and hit enter. While it's installing, I'm going to show you what's that Mongo .env does. So the .env is simply we can create the .environment file and provide the environment variable. Sometimes there are like a secret key that we don't want to push our file into the GitHub repo. In that case, what we can do, we can create the .env file to develop the application and test in our local environment. And when we push the application to the production, and we will create the environment variable in the server side so that we don't expose our important variables in the GitHub. Okay, so in order to load the environment file, we need to use .env. So it's saying as early as possible in your application require this one. So we simply copy this one and go to app.js file and just import at the very top, like line number 1 literally, and save that. So our package has been installed here, Mongoose and the .env. That's all for the .env. Now what we can do, on the root folder, create a file called .env, and here we have to, we'll get back to here in a second. Okay, let's go back to app.js. So now our Mongoose is installed. So let's go to Mongoose website and let's see what is it. Okay, so Mongoose is MongoDB object modeling tools designed to work in asynchronous environment. Mongo support both promise and callback. So this is the client help us to connect to the Mongo database. To do that, we need to first create the connection. So first what we do, we import the Mongoose and we create the connection like so. So I'm gonna copy here, import, we need to use node require model. I'm gonna make small here on the side. Okay, this is in the app.js file. Okay guys, so I'm gonna put, this is after the core setting here. So I'm gonna say Mongo connection, MongoDB connection setup. Here I'm gonna say require first. Once we need Mongoose require, and after that we need the connection. So we need connection here. So what happens before the application loads, the connection happens here. So I don't want to expose our Mongo URL, because in the future we're going to have Mongo URLs pointing to Mongo Atlas live database. So this one, what we do, we put this one in our environment variable. So if you remember, we use when we access our port, we use process.env.port. That's from the environment variable port. Similarly, we're going to have the Mongo URL as well. So let's create that. Let's go here. And here I'm going to say, we haven't created yet, but I'm going to write first. Okay. Process.env. So now we're going to put this one in our okay. So we simply provide Mongo URL here, and then our database name, I'm gonna put CRM underscore ticket underscore. So when you run the application for the first time, the Mongoose client will automatically create this database if database is not exist, and then do the operation onto that database. Save this file and let's go back to our application. So now we are calling this environment variable here to the process.env. So this is possible because we are loading .env config file here. Okay, so that's done. Let's save that file and let's run npm start. Let's run our application, and okay, the wait is not allowed here. Sorry guys, let's remove that. has to be in async function. We don't need that. And I want to do a couple of I want to trigger a couple of events just to check if Mongoose is connected or not. So what we can do now, mongoose.on, this is like event emitter. If you don't know what is event emitter, it's one of the core concept how Node works, so you should check out about it. Okay, so let's event on. So when Mongo is on open, that means if Mongo is connected. Let's run the arrow function and say console.log MongoDB is connected. That means if Mongo has open state, then it will trigger this event and then console log this out. And we do same thing for the error as well. On error, we get the error here. We simply console.error and save the file. So I want to execute this one only in the local development, okay, not in the production. So we can also hide that one in the production by simply accessing the node environment through the process.env.node_env. If it is in the production, if it is not in the production, that means in the development, then only execute this line for us to see. And I saw the tiny here logger. Let's put this one in the developer only, as development environment only, because I don't need to see this one in the production. And the port I don't like down here. I want to put port as higher as possible as well. Soon after the main components import, like save that. Okay, we are not touching anything else. So what we are doing is we importing the Mongoose package, using Mongoose package to connect our Mongo database. This is if you don't provide these informations, some of them will throw the error and then create some trouble. So it's as per the documentation, we just follow their recommendation. And here we are checking if we are not in the production mode, then we want to see if the Mongo is connected or not in our console, or if you have any error, we'll console the error. So if you want to see this one in the production, we need to just remove this line, or just leave it for now and just save the file. The error saying here mongo.on is not a function. Okay, we need to create the connection before we access to .on event. So let's create the connection first. Here I'm gonna do const MongoDB, okay, MDB, just like that, equals to mongoose.connection to this. And now from that connection, if it is connected, run this code, and the error event, run this code. So now save the file. The error should be gone now. Now you can see Mongo is connected. It's automatically, you can see that. Okay, so all right, MongoDB connection part is done. Our connection has been stabilized. Now let's create the database schema. So we need to create user schema before we can access to the database. So for that, what we're gonna do, we're going to, let me create this one. We don't need that. App.js, no need for now. Packages, no need. Error handling, no need. Git ignore, no need. Okay, let me close that as well for now. Okay, go to our file explorer, folder explorer. Inside src, I'm gonna create the module folder. Model folder. Inside model, I'm gonna create a user, and inside user, I'm gonna create two files. One is schema. So for the schema, I'm gonna write U capital user.schema.js, and I also want to create user.model.js. So in schema file, we will define the database, and model file, we will do all the database queries. Okay, so in user.schema, let's define the database. First, import the Mongo again. So const mongoose require mongoose. Okay, and we need to also get the schema. Const get schema equals to mongoose.schema. Okay, that'll do. And let's define our user schema as a function. So do const, I'll do user. You can name whatever you like, but just for the convenience sake, I'm putting user schema in that way. So that's the const user schema equals to, we have to instantiate our schema from the mongoose. So do new schema, and it's a function. Inside function, we need to pass the object. These objects are the actual, like a column, what you want to store in the database table. So for example, we want to store name. If you remember this data, we want to store all of them, right? So I just want to first, okay. So we, in our schema, this is database, these are the property we're going to store for user, right? And now we have to define what exactly type of the data, and we can kind of provide some sort of validation. Let me show you quickly if you want to like learn more about it. So if you go somewhere down to the validator, see, you can simply define like a type. What type is it? String or number? Oh, and you can also define the length, minimum, maximum. That's for the number. If you want to define the length, you can do max length, and you can also say required, true or false. Let's do that, and then you'll understand. So the name type definitely going to be string with S capital, string, comma, and what else? Okay, let's define max length. Make sure a user don't put more than 50 character, and is it required? So that means we put required, true. If it is optional, we don't need to put anything here. So I'm gonna do copy paste same thing few times and then use for the other one. So that's name done. For the company, it's the same thing. And after that, what we have, address, company address, and we have phone, email, and password. Phone, let's put address, phone, email, and password. Let's clean that up. We need one more, and the password. Okay. Okay, so we got name, we got company is string, address is a string. Maybe we can put 100 for the address, 100 character required, maybe not, it's optional. Phone number may be optional, but it's number with N capital, max length 11, email address string, maybe 50, required true, and password required true, max length is 100, and you can also define mean length required 8 character. That's like a normal password validation here. So if this rule doesn't pass when you inserting document, the Mongoose will throw the error. Okay, so let's save that and let's export this user schema out of here. So simply do module.exports equals to here we export. We cannot directly export this one user schema here, but what we can do, we can still call user schema for our export, but we have to create the model out of here. To do that, we have to go to the Mongoose, say Mongoose dot, we need to create a model, and inside the model, now we need to give the database name here. Sorry, the table, database table name here, and give the schema here. So this schema is now this. You can put any name here. This name must go the second parameter of the mongoose.module. And this table, whatever you put name here, later when you create the database here, do the operation, especially insert, it will create that table name here. And if the table name is found, it does the query over the table. If doesn't found, it will create the new table. And the way it works is that we have to put the upper name, for example, user, So when we put user, it will create the table name like users. This is how it works. Let's save that. And now we import this one in our module where we are going to add our queries, right? Go there, and I'm gonna say const user schema require from same folder user schema, yeah. And under here, let's create a function that stores user database. Okay, the query, the insert query. So let's do const insert user, and we'll have a user object coming from, we have not called this function from anywhere. Soon we'll be calling this one from our user router. Let's call this one here first. Sorry, create function here first, and let's do it. In order for us to store this user data in our database, we need to use user schema and pass the user object that we want to store, and simply say save. When we save it, we get callback. So simply we'll do two things happen. Dot either, then it succeeds and returns the insert data information, which we refer to, let's say data, and simply we do, let's console log data, or it will throw an error that we can catch here. Say catch, get the error, and then we can also console log that. Save that. And let's actually doing, instead of consoling, let's do one thing. Let's call this function in our user router. So now we are ready to save the data. So here, let's call that function. Before that, we need to import our function here. Const insert user require, which is in the model folder. So go to the model, user model, and here we are receiving data, right? So simply let's get the save the data, send the data to that function to save the data. So do const result equals to the function name, and we send request dot body, and let's wait for the result. And we can only use wait here after putting async here. Otherwise, wait will not allow to, we are not allowed to use wait here. Okay, and here console.log result, and when we return, we say maybe message new user created, and maybe we send the result as well. Now let's run our postman and see what happened, and simply send the same file and see if there is any error coming. Yes, it has. What it's saying is not a function. Okay, insert user is not a function in user router, line 14. User router line 14, insert user not a function because are we not exporting it? Yes, we are not. We haven't exported that, guys. So you guys would have already seen that. So module.exports insert user. Now the error should be gone. Let's call again API. Okay, new user has been created, but I cannot see the actual created data. That means let's see what happened here. Okay, actually data has been created. Now let's see this one user ID here. That's created by the Mongo. So when we go to our database now, let's refresh it. Now you can see CRM ticket, system database with users. This is what I was telling you before. So it's now creating users table and with the following information which we send through our API. There you go. Now you can create the user in your database through the API. Okay. Now it's not done yet. Okay. All right. So let's see why we are not returning the user, because we are just doing console log here. Let's return this one because, okay, in router here, we are receiving the data and we passing insert insert user, and we're waiting for the result, and we're processing that result and sending at the front. We are not receiving this one at the front, as you can see here, because when you go to the insert user in the user dot, okay, I'm gonna close this schema file now. When you go insert user in user model, we are not actually returning anything. So let's return promise here. So return new promise with all to result or reject. So if we successfully, our operation is successful, we result, otherwise we reject, and everything else goes inside. Yeah, and instead of now, we don't need this parenthesis. Now we simply gonna say, if there is a result, we resolve the data. If there is an error, then we reject it. Save the file. And now let's go back to our router. And now we have the either result or the error. So maybe, since we are throwing the error here, let's catch the error here in our router as well. So let's run try catch inside here, try catch. So this error means coming from there. So in our case, if we have error coming, then what we're gonna do is simply saying, actually I'm gonna say message from the error. Error will have a message, and we don't have a result then. But what we can also say is status and send the message, and you can console log the error for us to debug later. Okay, save that. And we don't need this one at the bottom. Now they all will go inside the try block. So we are inserting and we're getting result. Now we're sending the result. Now save that and send the user again from here. There you go. The message new user created, and this is the new user. You can see the ID as well. And if you try to, let's say, send invalid data, because remember in our module we said phone is required. So if you try to send this invalid data, okay, let's check our module quickly schema. So we're saying phone, okay, phone is not required. Password is required, right? So now put the email back here again, sorry, phone. So password is required. Let's say if you send invalid, so this is invalid JSON. See, there is a comma at the end of the data. So if you send this one, you're gonna get unexpected JSON error, yes. And if you send valid JSON but invalid form data, send it, it will say user validation failed, password path, password is required, because we said password is required. And if you give the password, let's say, but you gave password less than 8 character, and send it again, it will say password is shorter than minimum allowed length, which we have length of 8, which we have defined here. So this is kind of like a validation, inbuilt validation from Mongoose. Okay, let's put that back and again send it. Now create it again. Now let's go back to our database. We have been sending few times our form to the API, so we should have multiple data inserted. Refresh, there you go. We have how many data? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But can you guess there is something wrong here? Okay, give you a second. Okay, done. All right. So when user creates the account, one email should not have more than one account. But here we are using same email to create and then be able to create multiple accounts, which is not right. So what you have to do is that there is two ways. In this tutorial, as part of our application structure, we don't need user to create the account, so we are not going in deep about it. But I'll just simply show you how to solve this. So one way, you always check if email is exist or not before you inserting the data. Another way, you define the schema say that the email address is unique in the whole data table. So every time user insert the email must be unique. So to do that, we need to create index for that particular property. So to do that, we need to go through the log. As you can see here, now index is only one. You can do from here, create index, and you can write the index, and you can select the email and then do from here, right? And then select the index. But I want to show you other way as well. The other way you can do is, first I need to run Mongo daemon. So simply do MongoD. So when you do MongoD, it will run our Mongo server and it's ready to be connected. This is only possible, guys, if you have installed your MongoDB properly, okay? Again, if you haven't, then I have created a tutorial. The link for the tutorial is in the description. Okay, now let's connect this database. I need another console here. I'll use here. So now I can simply say Mongo to asset the Mongo shell. Now from here, this is a Mongo shell. So now we can create the do the Mongo queries. For example, so databases. So these are the database we have in our database, Mongo database. So we need to go inside the create ticket system. So we need to use the use CRM ticket system, and it's saying switch to database. Now we can also do show tables, and we only have one table. Definitely that's the only one source, and you can do query here like users dv.users that you can do find, and it will show all the data. Let's make it looks little better, looks little bit better by using prettier. And these are the data we have. So simply what we need to do is that we need to create index. First, before we create index, we have to make sure that there are no duplicate email already exist. So let's delete the duplicate entries so that we can create the index. So we only have one data now. So what I can do is dv dot users, that's our database. Now we have to say create index. Create index, and inside we have to provide for which property. For example, email. For the email, say 1 for yes, and we have to provide another object saying unique. Unique is true. Now close the parentheses and close the bracket and hit enter. There you go. Now the index has been created. See, number of index before the operation is 1, number of index after the operation is 2. Now we can confirm. Okay, we are done here. Let's close this part. I'm gonna delete that, delete this as well. So close this, we don't need it. And now I'm gonna show you here. See, we have only one index here. Now if I refresh this database, I can see 2 index. There you go, email. So again, you could have done from here as well. Put the index name, select the field, and then give the index. So I just wanted to show you from the console as well. Okay, that's done. Now let's try to go back in our Postman and try to send the same data which already exists in our database. So if I do send, it's gonna throw an error. There you go. It's saying now duplicate error collection. So blah blah blah. It's saying the email duplicate key email blah blah blah. So now it's saying I cannot save the data because email is duplicate. It has to be unique. So if you just simply change this one to 1, for example, 1, and send it, there you go. Now you have another data inserted which you can confirm from. Again, go to the table, go to document, and refresh it. There you go. So this is how you do the insert data. But there's one more problem we need to fix. As you can see, the password is saved as a plain text. That's no. Never save user password as plain text. Always hash it. So one of the best way to hash it is use Bcrypt. So let me show you quickly what is Bcrypt first. Bcrypt is library that help you to hash the password. Let's use the Bcrypt to change our password in hash encrypted version, and then we store that password in the database so that no one knows what the actual password is. So to do that, first we need to install it. let's go to our 566 per week download. It's not bad. Okay, let's go to our application. Stop the application from running, Control C, and say npm install Bcrypt, and then I'm gonna make it smaller. So let's see their recommendation how to use it. So simply we need to import the Bcrypt from the library, and the salt route around is that you define how slow you want to operate the Bcrypt function. So it's like a cost time. So let's say if you put more than 10, it will take more time to create or verify the password. This is good because if some hacker try to do random attack, and let's say they try to create thousands of password or check the password login detail in a second, it will not work. It will take its time, slow down the process, and only return whether it is correct in a login detail or not. So if you put more than 10, it will become slower, and if you make less than 10, it's definitely faster. So as recommended, let's leave 10. So I'm just going to copy this two line here. All right, just leave this one first. Okay, let's go here. Our installation is done. Again, let's run npm start the application. And here, what we're going to do that is, we're done with this. Okay, user router. So insert user. Okay, so before we inserting user, it would be better if we can change our plain password that is coming from the user request, change to hash, and then send to the insert function. So let's do that here. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna destructure what is coming from and put it there. So request from request.body. Now we have name, company, address, phone, email, and password. So what we're gonna do is we're going to create a helper function that will help our plain text to encrypt it, hash it, and send back to us before we send to our insert user. So here, let's call the hash password function. So let's create a function. Say I'm gonna say const hash password. Let's say pass equals to hash password function, and we pass the plain password here to this function, and we wait and we until this one returns back from this function, and we cannot use wait unless you have defined a thing which already been defined. And let's create this function in our helper. Go in the src folder and create a folder called helpers. Inside helpers, I'm going to create a file called bcrypthelper.js, and here we need to, I'm going to show you what is recommended, and then we just follow them. It's again, we need to import this one, bcrypt from the library, and there are different way you can use it. Technique 1, technique 2. I like technique 2. Simply we use technique 2. So I'm just gonna do like that. Okay, so let's create a function which we were already using here. We use that function in our bcrypt.helper, which we just created that full file. So const as password function, we're gonna have plain text, or rather password, and let's create the error function. And here now we return the promise again. Return new promise. I'm gonna say resolve again. We don't have to reject here. Resolve. I don't need reject. So we're going to resolve the encrypt here. So what we're going to do is that we need bcrypt, and bcrypt has a method called hash, which you can see here. But I'm going to use hash sync. That means synchronous. And inside hash, we provide the plain text first, that is and password, which is we are receiving in our function plain password, and we pass the salt round. Now it will do whatever it has to do to create and hash the password, and it will return from here. So let's save that and make sure you export this file as well. module.exports as password. So it's again in the helper bcrypt file. So let's import in our user.router. In the top here, let's import in const require our from the file. Again, go to helper function folder, go to bcrypt helper. That's where we have created our hash function, and which we are calling in our post router. So this one now will return the hash password. And now let's create a new object called new user object, which will hold all the data that coming from the URL, sorry, coming from the client, except the password. Instead of the plain password, we send the hash password here. So, and we create as an object here. And now instead of requested body object, now we can send our new user object to the insert user function. And now when we save it, and let's go to our, again, let's do the API where we can create our user. Let's send it. I know it's gonna throw the error because the email is duplicate. Let's do email 2 and send it. There you go. Now you can see our password is encrypted. So if you are wondering why this one is there, every time you create using this bcrypt, it's a pattern it uses, and the 10 is that the salt we provided has salt around, and this is the password it is created. So now if we go in our database and refresh it, see, before we had a plain password, and now we have a encrypted hash password. This is how you exactly store user data when you store user data. Okay, that is pretty much done for the user, I guess. Let me quickly go over it, what happened if you are in case like it did not follow along. So what we did was that we install Mongoose for database connection .env for load our environment variable in our application, and the bcrypt is for hashing the user password. In order to use them, we imported .env on the top of the file before loads anything else, and also we imported Mongoose and created the connection to our database. And we also checking in our when we are not in production, we are checking if database is connected, display Mongo is connected in the console like so, and if there is error, it will print the error as well. And we created a schema. We need schema in order for us to store the database. We created our schema here, name, company, address, blah blah blah. We export it as a module, and user is a database. Whenever you put user like this in actual database, Mongoose will create user like this, users u lower and then with a plural name schema. And then we imported this schema in our user model file where we will be doing all of our query from. So to store the database, we created a function that we're utilizing user schema and providing the user data and storing the data by providing save function. It's called back function. It will give you then data or catch error, and we are simply resolving data or rejecting error. So, and this function is exported and imported into our user router here, and we are passing the user data to insert the data. And before we are passing the data, instead of passing plain user password to store in database, we are hashing the password using bcrypt and then storing the hash password. Yeah, I think that is all for this tutorial, guys. I hope you learned some information from here. And let me quickly push to our repo. Let's start. Okay, make sure I haven't deleted anything. Modified is done. I'm gonna do git add all, git commit. I'm gonna say mongoose, and I'm gonna say MongoDB added user inserted password hashed, and git push master. Thanks for watching, guys. Hope you liked the tutorial. If you did, then give me a thumbs up. And in the next tutorial, we are going to create user authentication endpoint where when user signs in and send the email and password, we will verify the user login information. And if user is verified, then we will create JWT, JSON Web Token, and we will also use Redis database to cache that JWT and then response back to the client. And every time when client makes next time request, we will check that JWT if it is valid or not. It's gonna be very important tutorial, guys. If you haven't subscribed the channel yet, do subscribe the channel so that you don't miss my tutorial. And I'll see you in the next tutorial. Bye for now.